Hey y'all, this is part 2 of me completing my story, and I want to start off by saying I decided to tell my story to help others understand why I became a part of the social work or human services field. So I'll go ahead and start off where I left off, and that was when I was visiting my mom, and they discovered that my foster parent at the time was feeding me fish food. So after that, the removal process was very quick when it came to removing my sister and I from that particular foster home. After that, I remember them taking us to a group home. To this day, I cannot find the exact group home that we went to, but I remember they made us feel so welcome. They took us on trips, and we were with other children who were going through the same thing as us, so we felt good after a few days. But I remember not too long after, we were placed with a lady named Priscilla. And I'll never forget her name because she took so good care of us. Like, she was a great foster mom. And recently I've talked to one of her nieces. Like, we were kind of looking for each other, but we were placed with Priscilla. And I remember we were in a car and she was like, I'll be to get you guys tomorrow. We were like so excited because, I mean, it was kind of, I feel like it was a while. It took a while for our placement, but we still had a kind of a good time at the group home. So once we were placed with Priscilla, that's when I started to act out. I'm the youngest on my mom's side, and at the time I was the youngest on my dad's side as well. So my sister, she was always like, okay, I'll say, from what I know. So she went to school. She didn't really experience many anger issues. As for me, I began to start fighting, and I began to start fighting the foster parent. I just remember one time at the house, I don't know exactly what happened, but I remember the ambulance had to be called because I was literally fighting her. And at that time, I don't know why I was so angry. But now that I look back, I was like, oh my gosh, I was so angry. So, and the thing is, Priscilla dealt with that for a few years. I want to say maybe a couple of years, to where she couldn't deal with it no longer. And that's why I commend her, because she was still a great foster parent. So I ended up having to go to a behavioral health facility for children. I remember this, and at the time I thought it was a group home. So I'm like, okay, at the time I was a young child, so I didn't really fully understand where I was. I thought it was a group home. But I remember acting out, and they would give me a shot in my behind, and it would calm me down. And the fact that I know what that is now, it really bugs me to this day, because I was just angry because of what, I feel like I was angry because of my mom was not there. Like, I was so angry. And now that I look back, I feel like I did not need that kind of placement. I needed support more than anything, not that kind of support. But I remember my sister from Chicago, Toya, coming to visit me and doing my hair. My dad came. And then not too long after I left, my sister Bonnie came. So I'm like, what's wrong with Bonnie? So I'm guessing they just sent, I don't know why. I don't fully understand the extent of why they really sent us there. But I do know that we did have great support. And I remember this one guy named Chad. He loved my sister and I. Like, we received great support. And after that, I remember going to another foster home. And this one was not good. The foster home, I remember, was on the west side, and she also owned a daycare. And I remember sitting in, and I remember sitting, and I'm not sure she had a boyfriend or a husband, but I remember he was the one that basically took up for me. I remember the guy being there. I just didn't know who he was. So I remember sitting in the middle of the living room. That's where she mainly like had her kids. And it was before daycare started. And I'm not sure what I did. I think it was, oh my gosh. And I really hate that I don't remember what I did. I want to say I was not supposed to watch TV or something. I just got up out the room and came to the living room. And I remember her taking my head, literally walking me with my head, holding me from the back of my head like this, really tight. And as I'm walking, I remember my head going like this. And when she opens the door with my head, hits my head on the doorknob, and I remember just bursting out. I remember I didn't know it still affected me. And this is another reason why I decided to tell my story, because I knew that a week would be therapeutic for me, and it's just the real. And I was thinking about editing this part out, but I'm gonna go ahead and keep it. But because it's, like I said, it's therapeutic for me. And as an adult, I didn't know that it still would affect me this way. But let me get myself together. I remember her hitting my head, and I just began to burst out crying. And somehow the guy that was with her at the time, again, I don't know if it was her husband or not, he basically like protected me from her. And I remember us sitting in that room that she took me in, and he was like, "You're wrong. Why would you do this to a child?" And like, he was basically taking up for me. And I remember her standing in the doorway, and she was kind of heavy set. And this one was African American. So she was in the doorway, and she began to tear up and was like, "I'm so sorry." But after that, I remember my social worker removed me quickly. And that's when they just began the process of possibly sending me with my sister in Chicago. That came, and my sister, Toya, she took my sister, Bonnie, and I in, and she did the best that she could, and she was also still healing from her hurt. So, again, I was an angry child, naive. I remember running around. It's funny now, it wasn't funny then. Running around her car, and she was trying to tell me to come in the house. I think I had a fight at school. And again, I still was an angry child. I had to fight at the school. I think I got suspended. And I was running around her car, and she was trying to tell me to come in. As soon as I came in, I basically got in trouble, and I began to start fighting her as well. And that's my sister. And I realized now as an adult, like, oh my gosh, I was really so angry. All I did was fight. So my sister had to send me back, although she did try to keep me, but I was a handful. So my sister, Bonnie, stayed in Chicago, and I was sent back. And then that's when they began to start the process of me going back with my mother. And then part 3, my sister, Bonnie, is going to tell her side of the story. Because if it wasn't for her, we wouldn't have food to eat. She had to do certain things to protect me while my mom was gone. The reason why we were taken, And I want her to tell her own story of that situation. Again, this is why I have become a human services worker. And after having my daughter, Ava, that was like a new eye opener. Like, I never knew I could love my child so much. Like, I want to do better for me and for her and for my family. But after having her, I just had an eye opener. Like, oh my gosh, this little human is watching me, and she does everything I do. So I want a better life for her. I don't want her to ever have to experience the pain that we had to experience. And also, when I got back with my mom, those first few years, I went to Crispus Attucks High School, and everyone knows that I used to always argue, basically start fights or finish them. I don't know. But I was angry then. I was definitely angry then. They used to call me crazy. And that's why I feel for the children who go to school and they act out. And children judge them, but they don't know why. Honestly, it's not their fault. Something should change, but I was angry then. But again, once a few months after I graduated high school, I got pregnant that December, and I'm so thankful for my daughter. I'm so thankful for the future on where we're headed. But I want to say thank you for tuning in. I did not expect to cry, but I just want to give you guys the raw truth. And I hope to speak to you guys soon.